So it's been a good week. We've discovered quite a lot about the car, a lot about the tires. It's quite an unusual track where we actually race here in the evening, but for some reason they have us testing during the day. So the morning is always terrible. It's super windy, crazy hot track conditions, which is not really comparable to something that we end up experiencing here. But still lots of learnings, understanding the tires and how they operate the window, and then trying to understand just how to get this car in the right window. Try and optimize the car for next week so we can have a bit of a better balance. And but just in general, a good solid week with good mileage, both on Charles' side and my side. So I'm really grateful for that. All the hard work from all the team here during the week is great, and I'm excited for next week.
What if I told you that Ferrari didn't leave Bahrain worried about what it did on the track, but rather about what was leaked afterwards? Because the third day of testing was not just another day of long simulations under the secure sun. It was the day the numbers began to speak. And when the numbers speak in Formula One, no one can hide. Ferrari showed speed. He showed consistency. It showed glimpses of a car capable of fighting above. But at the same time, data began to be revealed from Lewis Hamilton's technical circle that completely changed the reading of the SF26. Energy drop at the end of the straight, an extremely narrow operating window, and hybrid management that was more fragile than Maranello wanted to admit. The big question is inevitable. Does Ferrari have a champion car, or a brilliant but dangerously sensitive car? The third day of testing in Bahrain dawned with a very different feeling inside the Ferrari box. The first 2 days had served to accumulate kilometers, validate basic correlations, and sustain a cautious but optimistic narrative. However, that last day was the truly important one. It was time to stop hiding cards, refueling, simulating real race conditions, and measuring, even indirectly, where the SF26 really was compared to its rivals. And it was precisely there where the harmony began to break between what we wanted to project and what the data began to show. Ferrari decided to focus much of the program on long runs with Lewis Hamilton at the wheel. It wasn't just about setting a fast time. The objective was to understand how the car responded when degradation began to appear and the battery was no longer in its ideal state. During the first stages of each stint, the SF26 showed a very solid image: stability under braking, good rotation in slow corners, and improved traction compared to previous generations. In that controlled scenario, the car seemed balanced, even promising. Times were consistent and initial degradation was within plan. From the outside, the reading was positive. But as the laps progressed and the fuel dropped, patterns began to appear that were not in the optimistic script. On the long straights of the secure circuit, especially in the area that connects turn 10 with turn 11 and the main straight, a progressive drop in electrical delivery was evident. It was not dramatic on an isolated lap, but in race simulation it was cumulative. The hybrid system did not sustain deployment with the same consistency as some direct rivals, forcing more aggressive lift and coast management. This not only affects lap time, but conditions attack and defense in real racing situations. And when that information began to circulate from Hamilton's technical environment, the impact was immediate. What was most disturbing was not only the specific loss of energy, but the extreme dependence of the car on a very narrow operating window. When the road temperature, battery charge, and hybrid map were in the sweet spot, the SF26 was fast. Very fast. The intermediate sectorials showed that Ferrari could be in the conversation for pole position. But as soon as one of those parameters moved even a couple of degrees more on the track, a small change in balance, a variation in regeneration, the car's behavior became much more delicate. The rear part began to feel light in transition, and stability when exiting corners required more steering wheel correction than desired. Hamilton, with his experience, managed to maintain the pace. But he did it by adapting his driving, not because the car was naturally benign. It adjusted corner entry, modulated the brake to maintain a high minimum speed, and manually managed moments in which electrical deployment was not optimal. That ability to adapt masked the problem to a certain extent, but it also exposed it. The SF26 was not delivering performance automatically, required constant intervention from the cockpit. And that, over a long calendar and in variable conditions, can become a structural weakness. Meanwhile, on the wall, the reading was more complex than the public statements made it seem. Ferrari saw a car with real potential to fight in qualifying, but also detected that in the race it would depend too much on getting the energy map and thermal management right. The illusion was still alive because the performance peaks were evident. But the third day made it clear that this peak was not sustainable under any circumstances. This is how the day closed. With an SF26 that was not slow, that was not out of the fight, but that had shown technical cracks before even reaching the first Grand Prix, Ferrari did not leave Bahrain defeated. He came away aware that his car can be competitive, as long as they manage to extend that operating window and stabilize energy delivery. And that's a much more complex task than simply adding downforce or introducing a visual update. Because it's one thing to have a sensitive car, and quite another to have a car that depends almost obsessively on a perfect combination of variables to perform. In the central part of the third day, when Ferrari decided to simulate a scenario closer to the real race, the behavior of the SF26 began to show its true strategic face. The problem was not only the drop in energy at the end of the straight. The problem was how that fall altered the entire ecosystem of the car. In Formula One, electrical deployment is not just top speed. It is stability in the acceleration phase, it is protection of the rear tire, and it is attack capacity. When the hybrid system does not deliver consistently, the driver has to compensate with the pedal and the line. And that completely changes the management of the stint. During those long runs on day 3, it was noted that Ferrari was able to sustain a competitive pace for the first few laps of the tire, but as the battery entered more demanding cycles, consistency was compromised. We are not talking about a sudden drop of 2 seconds, but rather small cumulative losses. 0.2 here, a correction there, a small oversteer on the way out. In a tight championship, those tenths repeated over 20 laps are the difference between winning and defending. The most delicate thing was that the car did not behave the same in all phases of the stint. With high fuel, the balance seemed relatively stable. But when the load dropped and the driver began to demand more rotation in the mid-corner, the rear end became livelier. And here comes another key element that left the team reflecting. The active aero algorithm seemed extremely dependent on the energy state of the car. That is, aerodynamic stability was not completely independent of hybrid management. That complicates development because you're not correcting an isolated area, you are touching an interconnected system. Hamilton managed to keep the times within a competitive range, but the effort it required was evident. Constant adjustments in the brake balance, micro-corrections at slow corner entry, and very calculated management of the accelerator so as not to strain the rear axle. The car could be fast, yes, but it wasn't naturally smooth. And when a driver of Hamilton's caliber needs to drive with that level of intervention to sustain race simulation pace in a test, the team interprets it as an early warning. Ferrari, internally, began to divide its analysis into 2 planes. The first, the optimistic, the performance ceiling is there. When the SF26 enters its ideal window, the sectorials demonstrated. The second, the realist, that window is too narrow. And in a long season with changes in temperature, different types of asphalt and consecutive races, depending on such a fine margin is a huge competitive risk. This is where the psychological impact also plays an important role. The third day had to close the preseason with structural confidence. Instead, it left a feeling of condition potential. It is not a failed car. It is not a slow car. But it is not a robust car in any scenario either. And in modern Formula One, where margins are minimal and strategic reliability is as important as pure speed, that fragility can become the true Achilles heel. Dependence on temperature, hybrid map, perfectly synchronized aerodynamic balance. And that turns every weekend into an equation of extreme precision. The question is no longer whether the SF26 can win. The question is whether you can do it without everything having to turn out absolutely perfect. Because until now we have talked about data, clipping, thermal window, aerodynamic sensitivity. But Act 3 is not just about what happened on the track. It's about what changes from what was discovered. The third day did not leave Ferrari out of the fight. It left him in a much more dangerous position, knowing that he has a car capable of winning, but still not reliable under sustained pressure. When the team began to cross-reference the complete telemetry of the long runs with the energy patterns, they understood something key. The SF26 is not inconsistent due to lack of charge or pure mechanical weakness, but due to synchronization. The car needs everything to be aligned to the millimeter. Battery status, asphalt temperature, hybrid deployment phase, aerodynamic balance, and tire degradation. If one of those 5 elements is displaced, performance does not plummet, but it does lose that surgical precision that makes a difference in the elite. And here's the real implication. In qualifying, that type of car can be devastating. 1 lap, charged battery, ideal window, aggressive map. Ferrari can surprise. It can even dominate certain Saturdays. But in the race, where the pace is built lap by lap and the variables constantly change, that fragility becomes permanent strategic stress. The third day of Bahrain left a very clear internal feeling. Ferrari no longer has a structurally weak car like in past cycles. He has a complex car. And complexity in Formula One is a high-risk bet. Hamilton understood it quickly. His accelerated adaptation was not coincidental. He adjusted style, modulated inputs, managed energy intelligently. But the fact that he had to do it so soon revealed that the SF26 is not yet a self-driving single-seater. It requires constant conscious intervention. And that, over the course of a season, wears out. Ferrari left the third day with two certainties. The ceiling is there, and the margin for error is minimal. That combination can take you to the title or it can condemn you to losing key points at critical moments. There is no middle ground. The impact was not media. There were no alarmist statements. But behind closed doors, the message was forceful. If they do not extend the car's operating window before the intense phase of the calendar begins, they will depend too much on perfect weekends. And in Formula One, perfect weekends do not exist. So the takeaway from day 3 in Bahrain is not that Ferrari is weak. Ferrari is in an unstable equilibrium. It can be the protagonist or it can be exposed. It will all depend on how much they manage to stabilize that hybrid system and that aerodynamic sensitivity before the season puts them under real fire. The conclusion of everything that happened on the third day of testing in Bahrain is much deeper than it appears at first glance. Ferrari did not leave the circuit worried about the lack of speed. She didn't leave alarmed by a car out of rhythm. She left shocked because the moment she began to demand real racing conditions from the SF26, limits were revealed that they did not expect to see so soon. The third day confirmed something very clear. The car's potential is real. When everything aligns, the Ferrari can make a difference. It can be strong in traction, solid in slow corners, and competitive in key sectors. The ceiling is there. But it also confirmed that this roof depends on extremely fine synchronization between energy, aerodynamics, and thermal window. And that completely changes the reading of the project. What the data from Hamilton's environment revealed was not an absolute weakness, it was a structural fragility. The progressive drop in electrical deployment at the end of the straight, the need to manage clipping more aggressively, and the sensitivity of the rear when the hybrid map is not perfectly optimized are signs that cannot be ignored. Not because they condemn the car, but because they turn it into a machine that demands constant perfection. Ferrari leaves Bahrain with an uncomfortable but valuable truth. It has a car capable of fighting for poles and victories, but it still does not have a robust car in any scenario. In qualifying, it can be explosive. In racing, it can be vulnerable if energy management and aerodynamic stability are not perfectly balanced. And in a long season, that difference is what separates the contenders from the champions. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.